All right, then I'll go back to our story. The Germans occupied Hungary March 19, 1944. The deportations proceeded extremely quickly, followed after the Yellow Star and the ghettoization. This is the Yellow Star that my mother wore in 1944. We come to June, and my parents were wondering what to do. They went out to the suburbs and thought of hiding out with a suburban piano maker. The Russians were already a few hundred miles from the Hungarian border. It was just a question of time. But they were afraid that I, as a 4-year-old, would give them away. So they looked for other options. My uncle was a Zionist and was aware of this train. And he told our family, if we stay here in Budapest, we will perish 100%. If we go on this train, we will perish 90%. So, on June 30th, 1944, my parents and I and 11 other members of our family boarded this train. There were a few surprises right away. First of all, the train was not a train, but a cattle car. There was also, by the second or third day out, it was alluded to in the film, there was a rumor that swept the entire train that we were going to Auschwitz. It turned out that we were going through a small town in Czechoslovakia called Auschwitz. One little letter makes a difference. The third surprise was the so-called delousing procedure, where everybody had to get undressed, and my mother told me that when she entered the showers, she didn't know whether water or gas would come out. In any case, 9 days later came the biggest surprise of all. We were supposed to be going to neutral Spain or Portugal, and we ended up in northern Germany, in a place called Bergen-Belsen. It was a name that meant nothing to us, not like the way it means something to you here. It was just the name of a place. We arrived. My first comment, which was always told in the family, was, I said in Hungarian, "Nem jó itt nekem." It's not good for me here. In any case, our conditions were a little bit better than for other people. We did not have to work, and we did not have to wear a uniform. Within 6 weeks, 326 of our group were allowed to go to Switzerland. In that 326 were 11 members of my family, including everybody except my parents and me. At this time, my mother, who was normally a shy person, went up to the commandant in Bergen-Belsen and asked, couldn't we just also go with the rest of our family? He shouted at her, "Sind Sie wahnsinnig? Are you crazy to challenge the German authority here?" And so we stayed while the rest of our family left. August, September, October, November, December. We thought we would never get out. And then on December 2nd, we got the news that we too would be leaving for Switzerland. And at this point is my worst memory is going to the railroad station at Bergen-Belsen. My parents walked, and I was entrusted to an older lady to go by truck. We got to the railroad station in Bergen-Belsen. It was dark, it was cold, it was night. I couldn't find my parents, and they couldn't find me. In the end, of course, we did find each other, and 4 days later, we arrived in Switzerland. Unbeknownst to us, Dr. Katzner was negotiating furiously with the help of the joint representative in Switzerland, and also, for the first time, with President Roosevelt's representative in Switzerland from the War Refugee Board. We arrived, and that was the end of the story for us. This was the most successful Jewish rescue of the Holocaust. There are a few items I want to mention that weren't touched upon in the movie. Number one, Dr. Katzner was a nobody. He was not part of the official Jewish organization. There were two Jewish communities in Hungary, the Orthodox and the conservative called Neolog. He was not a member of either of them. He was a provincial journalist and lawyer, and he was a member of this Zionist committee. Hungary did not have a very strong Zionist organization. Not more than 3% of the population belonged to the Zionist group. So he had no clout. He was nobody. If you would have asked somebody in 1944, oh, Dr. Katzner says such and such. Dr. Katzner, who's he? So you cannot picture him as being a very important person. If you want to blame somebody, then the blame, which I don't agree with, but then the blame would go on the official Jewish leadership. The second thing that the movie does not state was a very important factor, and that was the declining military situation of the Germans. This negotiation could not have taken place in 42, 43, and the worse the military situation got, the better became our chances. What did Dr. Katzner negotiate with? Nothing. He had nothing. He negotiated purely out of bluff and skill. Those were the only things that he had, and this declining fortune of the German military situation. People were already looking towards the end of the war and trying to perhaps make a little alibi. I think this Kurt Becker was looking towards the end of the war and was looking for a way to explain things. Nonetheless, when Dr. Katzner's family, and we all were in Switzerland, Dr. Katzner and Becker went back and presented to each concentration camp commandant the orders from Himmler, not to resist in the handing over of the concentration camps. So, in the end, Dr. Katzner negotiated with nothing and accomplished the largest Jewish rescue of the Holocaust. It's not fair to ask why he didn't do this or why didn't he do that. Do we ask Schindler, why didn't you warn, why didn't you do this, why didn't you do that? We are happy what he did. Some people say the only problem with Dr. Katzner was that he was Jewish. Had he been a Gentile, this film would not have been made. I'd be happy to answer any questions, particularly about the history, not so much about the politics of post-war Palestine and Israel. Anybody have any questions? Yes?
You said he negotiated with nothing, but is it factual or not that money was in fact paid?
Yes, money was paid. Of the 1,684 people, 150 people, including my grandfather, paid money. But the vast majority of the people did not pay anything. There were orphans and students, and in the end, anybody who walked into that train could stay there and was part of the train. But yes, money was demanded and money was given. Arnold?
How did all these people know about the train?
The question was, how did people know about the train? In our case, my uncle was a Zionist, and he was in the Zionist committee, so he knew about the train. Some people, there were millions of scenarios. Some people through Zionist connections. There was also an attempt to make the train kind of a Noah's Ark. There were Orthodox, there were Zionists, there were Hashomer HaTzair. There was two of everything. There were Slovakian refugees, there were Polish refugees. Two of everything.